Please open up your Bibles to 2 Samuel chapter 18. 2 Samuel chapter 18. When you look at the history up to this point of what's going on, it's kind of hard to look at. Some of the things that have already happened is pretty rough. Of course, when I look at this, it all goes back to a certain sin in David's life. These things just kind of keep going, because of his sin with Bathsheba. And of course, he doesn't handle himself well in that regard. And that's the big blemish in his life. Whenever we start talking about David, if anybody brings up anything negative, usually it goes right to that passage, right? That's where people, ultimately think. There are, as far as David's life is concerned, there's really no bigger foible than that one. But that one thing goes on to produce so many other things. And if you really take a minute, and I know that we've mentioned this already, but if you look at what has happened here with Absalom and his siblings, and these siblings are all varying ages, but you have the whole sin with Amnon and Tamar, and Amnon would have been a teenager at the time, as well as Absalom at the time of David's sin with Bathsheba. And that happening during your formative years is going to be a big thing. This is very public. It's not a private thing. It's not like this is just a sin that the family knows. This is a sin everybody knows about. And so this is not a private thing. This is a very public thing. Now, when we get to chapter 18, this is really going to be the conclusion of his troubles with his son, but it's not his troubles altogether. And so let's continue to look at this. And, as a father, it's hard to read chapter 18 and to study it and to really make some application here, because you have to really, search your own soul for the end result of what we see here in chapter 18. So let's look at this. There are just a few basic points. The first one comes in the first 18 verses here. This is Absalom is defeated. And David numbered the people, verse 1, that were with him, and set captains of thousands and captains of hundreds over them. And David sent forth the people, a third part into the hand of Joab, and a third part into the hand of Abishai the son of Zeruiah, Joab's brother, and the third part under the hand of Ittai the Gittite. And the king said unto the people, I will surely go forth with you myself also. But the people said, Thou shalt not go forth, for if we flee away, they will not care for us. Neither if half of us die will they care for us, but thou art worth 10,000 of us. And therefore now it is better that thou be ready to succor us out of the city. And so they're saying, look, David has split them up into bands of 2,000, and they are all, there's 3 different groups of them, and they're going to be in different places. And you're going to see that this is going to be strategically the best thing that they're going to do. And of course, strategically, where they actually meet is going to be the biggest aspect of this. And but at this time, David wants to go out with them. He's king. He's been doing this for a long time. Matter of fact, the only time that we see that he doesn't do this, what happens? Well, we see trouble. And so he goes, you know what, I'm going to go out there. And they say, no. This time you don't go. You don't go because you are the most valuable one here. They don't care about us, but you're worth 10,000 of us. You're worth way more than any one of us, and so you're not going to go with us. And so the people convince him to stay in the city. And so, this is another thing, to mention here. it is likely that David is wanting to go out, knowing that everybody's looking for him, and hoping that he can at least protect Absalom, because we see that is the end result of this. He wants to protect his son. Verse 4, and the king said unto them, what seemeth you best I will do? And the king stood by the gate, and all the people went out by hundreds and by thousands. And David, he just sits by the gate. And matter of fact, he's waiting there when they come back. And the king commanded, verse 5, Joab and Abishai and Ittai, saying, deal gently for my sake with the young man, even with Absalom. And all the people heard when the king gave all the captains charge concerning Absalom. So they were told one thing: just be gentle with him. Don't, basically, don't kill him. Don't hurt him. This is his son. So the people went out into the field against Israel, and the battle was in the forest of Ephraim. And the people of Israel were smitten there before the servants of David. And there was a great slaughter there that day of 20,000 men. Now, verse 8 is pretty interesting. Verses 8 and 9 are, but verse 8 in particular, for the battle was there spread over the face of all the country, and the forest devoured more people that day than the sword devoured. Now, what does that mean? I think that it could go in two ways. I'll tell you both of them, and I'll give you which one I think it is. It could be that the landscape is so dangerous that people are, falling off cliffs and all that, and I've heard people describing it that way. Maybe it is that there's wild beasts and they're being, bitten by snakes and all those kind of things. Likelihood is this is a thick forest, and I have read and watched documentaries over the conflict in Vietnam, and it seems to be much the same way. They were going in, they were fighting in the jungle, and it was a thick jungle, and people were hiding in trees and under the ground and just in all sorts of nooks and crannies, and then of course you have people that are not accustomed to this area, and they come in. Well, then they're just sitting ducks. They don't know anything about this area, and it's hard to navigate. And you might think, I'll get through this brush, only to find as soon as you get through that brush, you're right against the enemy, and well, it's too late at that point. And I think that's likely what is being described as, you'll see that, that's exactly what's happening with Absalom. He is taken by the landscape, if you will. Verse 9, and Absalom chanced to meet the servants of David, and Absalom was riding upon his mule, and the mule went under the thick boughs of a great oak, and his head caught hold of the oak, and he was taken up between heaven and earth, and the mule that was under him went on. I think there's some foreshadowing here, that he is riding on this mule, and listen, you have got to have some thick hair, for you to be riding on a mule and for your hair to get caught in branches and you to just be hanging there from your head. I don't know how that happens. I look back through Hunter's pictures thinking that could be the closest thing that I could think of, but anyway, when you think about this, he's riding on the mule, this is and then kind of a kingly thing, and then all of a sudden he's taken off the mule rides out from underneath him, kind of foreshadowing your throne is gone, your kingship is gone, and so anyway, he is taken up off of that, and then verse 10, and a certain man saw it and told Joab and said, behold, I saw Absalom hanging in an oak. And Joab said unto the man that told him, and behold, thou sawest it, and why didst thou not smite him there to the ground? And I would have given thee 10 pieces of silver in a girdle. And so he tells Joab, hey, I saw Absalom hanging from a tree. And he goes, why didn't you kill him? Now, what has been the decree given to everybody? Deal gently with my son. And Joab immediately says, why didn't you kill him? And so verse 12. Say, yeah, first of all, why don't you kill him? If you would have, I'd have given you money. I'd have given you clothes. This would have been good for you, right? Verse 12, and the man said unto Joab, though I should receive 1,000 pieces of silver in my hand, yet would I not put forth my hand against the king's son. For in our hearing the king charged thee and Abishai and Ittai, saying, beware that none touch the young man Absalom. So, he is being more righteous than Joab. He heard the decree. He said, I don't care how much money you give me. You can give me 1,000 pieces of silver. I'm not gonna kill the king's son, especially after I heard the decree that he gave to everybody, right? Verse 13, otherwise, if I had dealt falsely against his life, and there is no matter hid from the king, so this is still that man talking, then thou thyself would have set thyself against me. So he says, you know what, if I had done that, and I had dealt falsely, then this wouldn't have been hidden, and then guess what you would have done? You would have gone against me. So he's saying Joab would have been his enemy if he had done this. Then said Joab, I may not tarry thus with thee. And he took 3 darts in his hand and thrust them through the heart of Absalom while he was yet alive in the midst of the oak. And so basically what you see here, Joab is just like, okay, enough talking, let's just be done with this. And so he goes and he thrusts these darts through the heart of Absalom. And then 10 young men that bare Joab's armor compassed about and smote Absalom and slew him. So, obviously Joab has mortally wounded him, and he is going to die. But then these 10 men come, and they go ahead and they finish him off. And Joab blew the trumpet, and the people returned from pursuing after Israel, for Joab held back the people. And they took Absalom, and here's a good thing to mention. I didn't have this in my notes, but this is basically a civil war. This is not an enemy that you go and you pursue until you have killed all of them. That's not what this is. You are, protecting your brethren. And so now that the threat is eliminated, you blow the trumpets. You're not going to go and pursue your brethren more. You've just finished the deal. I mean, it's the same thing that, might happen if a conflict were going on in the U.S. against U.S. against U.S. If we had another civil war in our time, the same thing would happen. You don't want to destroy each other till nobody's left. That would just weaken everybody. It would be until a conflict is resolved. As hard as that is to think about, that's what would happen. And so the conflict is resolved. Joab keeps the people back from pursuing anymore. Verse 17, they took Absalom and cast him into a great pit in the forest and raised over him a very great heap of stones, and all Israel fled, every one to his tent. Now Absalom in his lifetime had taken and reared up for himself the pillar which is in the king's dell, for he said, I have no son to keep my name in remembrance, and he called the pillar after his own name, and it is called Absalom's monument unto this day. All right. Let's look at this next section. That was Absalom's defeat. Sorry, I didn't see that. But let's go. Word reaches David. Look, word reaches David. And this is of Absalom's death here. Verse 19. And then said Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, let me now run and bear the king tidings, how that Jehovah hath avenged him of his enemies. And Joab said unto him, thou shalt not be the bearer of tidings this day, but thou shalt bear tidings another day. But this day thou shalt bear no tidings, because the king's son is dead. Basically, don't go bear. This is not good tidings. You're not going to be that messenger. Not today. You're not going to do that. And so you'll go bear a message another day, just not this one. Then said Joab to the Cushite, go tell the king what thou hast seen. And the Cushite bowed himself unto Joab and ran. So you've got a Cushite here, an unnamed man, just his origin is mentioned. And, so he is not from this area. He's not from this area at all. And so Joab gives the message to the Cushite. Then said Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, yet again to Joab, but come what may, let me, I pray thee, also run after the Cushite. And Joab said, wherefore wilt thou run, my son, seeing that thou wilt have no reward for the tidings? But come what may, said he, I will run. And he said unto him, run then, Ahimaaz, run by the way of the plain, ran by the way of the plain, and outran the Cushite. So, basically, if you look at a map, you see that, he basically takes a shortcut. He knows his way around this area. I don't know how many people have, spent a whole lot of time in the woods, but, I've spent a lot of time in the woods, and when you are in a new place and you don't know all the ins and outs of it, you take the paths that you know, as long as it's daylight. You don't want to take a path that you don't know at night. You want to know where you're going. And so there are times when you're out and you are getting used to a new place that, the very first time you go out there, you usually don't go out of your way that you went. You go out, you look around, you try to find some markers of where you are, and if you don't find anything substantial, you just follow your trail all the way back. That's just the safest route. So likely, something like this is going on. The Cushite doesn't know the area like Ahimaaz does, and so he takes a shortcut. Verse 24, now David was sitting between the two gates, and the watchman went up to the roof of the gate unto the wall, and lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, a man running alone. And the watchman cried and told the king, and the king said, if he be alone, there is tidings in his mouth. And he came apace and drew near. And the watchman saw another man running, and the watchman called unto the porter and said, behold, another man running alone. And the king said, he also bringeth tidings. And the watchman said, I think the running of the foremost is like the running of Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok. And the king said, he is good, he is a good man, and cometh with good tidings. And Ahimaaz called and said unto the king, all is well. And he bowed himself before the king with his face to the earth, and said, blessed be Jehovah thy God, who hath delivered up the men that lifted up their hand against my lord the king. And the king said, it is well with the young man Absalom. And Ahimaaz answered, when Joab sent the king's servants, even me, thy servant, I saw a great multitude, but knew not what it was. And the king said, turn aside and stand here. And he turned aside and stood still, and behold, the Cushite came, and the Cushite said, tidings for my lord the king, for Jehovah hath avenged thee this day of all men that rose up against thee. And the king said unto the Cushite, is it well with the young man Absalom? And the Cushite answered, the enemies of my lord the king, and all that rise up against thee to do thee hurt, be as that young man is. And so, what is the point of that, right? Hey, is my son safe? Is the young man Absalom safe? And then he says, what? You know what? If all your enemies were as the young man is, you'd be doing okay, right? But this is not the news that David wants to hear. David doesn't want to hear that. David wants to hear that his son is still alive. There are times that, I think that we can all kind of relate to this. If your kids, you've got your kids and you love your kids, and they do something and you see that they need some instruction, right? You need to help them out. And at the same time, this can be from a very young age. I knew a parent that's, we were joking about this, and I thought that he was joking at the time, and I've understood later that he was not joking. But we were talking about our kids, and we were, talking about, spanking and whatnot, and he said, I can't spank my kids, they're too cute. And I thought my kids were cuter, but I spanked them, and I was just laughing. I thought that was a joke until I realized, well, no, it wasn't a joke. And Well, I hope his kids make a turnaround, because that's not exactly what is being reared. You know, what you want is not being reared. And so, you know, it's sad. But there are certain things David should have done before this point, and he never did. You know, when Amnon had done this, you know, that was worthy of death. You know, he should have had done what he needed to in that instance. When Absalom, did what he did, it was certainly worthy of death. I mean, he killed somebody. That was law. And yet, what did we see David do? David turned a blind eye. And you know what? I really don't care how cute you think your kids are, because I bet you they're adorable, right? But here's the thing: you really need to think about their soul. You need to think about what's best for them. That is the most important thing. Oh man, sure, they're adorable, right? And you love them a lot. But if you love them, what are you going to do? You're going to teach them what's right. That's the best thing that you could do for them. Teach them what is right and good. And you know what? I never understood it. When my parents would spank me, they'd say something like, oh, this hurts me more than it hurts you. And I'm thinking, yeah, right. I'm the one here with the sore rear end. There's no way this hurts you more than it hurts me right now. As a father, I realize, oh no, I don't like doing it. There are some times, and my kids could probably attest to this, and I'd say, please stop. I don't want to spank you. I will. I don't want to. So quit doing stuff that gets a spanking, We don't want that. We don't want to reprimand like that, but the end result is, do you want your children to go to heaven or not? When David asked this question, is the young man Absalom safe? He hadn't been safe for a long time. And according to what we see in the scriptures, David was not being a very good father. We get a little snapshot here. I get that. We get a little snapshot of David's life. We get a little snapshot of these people. If I were going to, just recently we had Brother Glenn Matthews' funeral. If we were all to just write a little bit about Glenn Matthews, you think that we might span a little bit more than a couple of chapters, right? Well, that's all we have of Absalom, if you think about it. We don't have much on him. We don't really have much in the grand scheme of things, since this sin with Bathsheba and this time period covers years. So I get that. Don't think I'm being overcritical, but I will say this. He has done something wrong, and the prophecy shows that he's going to have trouble in his home throughout years, and that's exactly what we're seeing. Is the young man Absalom safe? No, he's not. Look at verse 33 with me. David mourns, and this goes into chapter 19, but to kind of stay neat, let's stay right here in verse 33. And the king was much moved and went up to the chamber over the gate and wept. And as he went, thus he said, "O my son Absalom, my son Absalom, would I had died for thee. O Absalom, my son, my son." If you're a good father, you understand those words. Oh man, you would die for your children, in a heartbeat. You wouldn't even have to think about it, right? And David says, I would have died for thee. You know what, though? We can feel that way, but let's think about this. He's mourning, and he understands, that he's not getting his son back, and Yeah, he would have died for him, but here's something that I really wish I could say. According to the scriptures, it would have been great if he lived for him. It would have been great if he lived a great example and to be somebody that, he could always look up to in every instance. But David didn't do that. And it really affects his family here. I've seen a lot of things where people have made a lot of mistakes and they try to make up for it, and it's good. We need to do that. But when you have an impressionable children, it does not always turn out to be the best thing for them. And so I say all this thinking this for us. We need to think, inwardly about these things. What is it? What is our example giving? Do we have a good example? I mean, do our children or grandchildren look at us and think, well, that's a strong, healthy Christian. That's somebody who knows the scriptures. That's somebody who follows the scriptures. Are you the kind of person that when, someone has a Bible question in your family, they come looking to you? That's what we should all strive to be doing, right? Be an example. Guide your family. Of course, like I said, I don't know all the ins and outs of this. I don't know, if David was out playing catch with Absalom all his life. I don't know any of that stuff. But what I see from the scriptures is pretty pointed. It's very potent. And we have an example here. And we need to try to live up to a standard that our children can look up to and go, you know what, that's what I want to be when I grow up. I want to be just like my dad or just like my mom. And here is the sad fact of the matter. You ready for this? Likely is they already want to do that. But the question is, are you being a good enough example? I tell you, as many good qualities as David has, and he is a man after God's own heart, this is the biggest disappointment, of course, in his life. And so, brethren, like I said, I'm not trying to be overly critical, but I'm trying to be very reasonable about what has happened in the life of a man who is considered a man after God's own heart. I don't know exactly all that means, really. I know that, I have an idea of what that means. I think that a big part of that is that David was a man that when he was faced with something and sin was pointed out, he would repent, and I've heard that mentioned so many times. I think it goes deeper than that. And I ask myself, am I a man after God's own heart? I mean, David's the only one mentioned in Scripture like that, so maybe there weren't many people like that. And so if David can do something, so heinous, then you know what? I better be very careful. Brethren, let's be careful when it comes to spiritual things. Let's serve God fully. Let's follow Him wholly. And let's seek Him out diligently. If there's anybody here that needs to respond to the invitation, it is yours. Please come as we stand and as we sing.